Mariam Wahba is here with us. So is Natalie Ecanow, and they are both from the FDD. Ladies, great to have you here.
Great to be with you today.
Thanks
for having us.
Mariam, first to you. Let's talk about the dynamics of this deal, where it took place in Egypt. A lot of credit going to Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. Talk to us about this.
Absolutely. I mean, we're learning some of the more complex and complicated details of the deal in the coming hours and in the coming days. I think there's a couple of notable things here. First and foremost, this deal took place in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, as you rightfully noted. And I think this is a significant location. Obviously, Egypt has been a historic peace broker between Israel and multiple Palestinian factions throughout the last several decades. I mean, think about the last time there was a conflict between a Palestinian faction and the Israelis. It was the Egyptians who brokered the deal. What makes this quite interesting from my perspective is that Qatar has been taking the lead on negotiations up until now, and then we saw things change after the September 9th attack by the Israelis on Doha, and Egypt stepping in a little bit to take over that lead mediator role.
Yeah, Natalie, talk to us a little bit more about that and the counterbalance that Egypt provides. There's been a lot of criticism of Qatar and their role in harboring Hamas terrorists inside that country. What do you think was kind of the breakthrough moment? We saw that historic and I think iconic moment when Marco Rubio leaned into President Trump yesterday. What do you think it was that finally got us to that point?
You know, so I think that September 9th strike that my colleague Mariam just mentioned was really a pivotal moment over the course of this war. The Qataris have been sheltering Hamas leaders for decades, not just beginning on October 7th, 2023. They've been sending money to Gaza, both discreetly and overtly. And over the course of the past 2 years, we haven't really seen any pressure from the Qataris on their Hamas clients. And I think what Israel did when it struck Doha on September 9th was really show the Qataris, look, this war is coming to you. You are harboring the terrorists who started this war, and you can't really hide anymore. And then we saw President Trump offer the Qataris security assurances. And I think as part of that process, that transaction, President Trump sort of nudged the Qataris to start heaping pressure on Hamas, and that's ultimately what led us to where we are today.
We saw that presidential executive order basically protecting Qatar and talking about its importance last week, I believe it was, Mariam. And many of us wonder what exactly was going on here. One of the things I read this week, though, is what President Trump and his team have been able to do is influence Qatar in a way where the broader Arab world is going to see, I guess, a different message. And again, I'm a little skeptical if this is going to work, but apparently Al Jazeera, which is a network which is funded by the Qatari government, is going to change its tone on the way it covers the issues between Israel and Hamas and other terror groups. Do you actually think that part of this deal, which isn't front page news necessarily, do you think that will come to fruition?
What an excellent question. Look, Qatar is a Pandora's box, and I think we're just beginning to understand the scope of influence it has both in the Middle East, in the region, and here in the U.S. I think there's a couple things to unpack here with regards to Al Jazeera and the fact that we're hearing early reports that this deal that the Trump administration signed has some language that pertains to Al Jazeera, which is a Qatari-funded and operated media empire. And I think if this is true, if this alleged reporting is true, I think it's a huge win. Now, I think it'll come down to execution, of course. My colleagues and I watch Al Jazeera to see what kind of rhetoric, how does it change, what kind of coverage has it given Hamas and other militant groups since October 7th and before October 7th. And just looking at 2 days ago, the second anniversary of the October 7th attack, we've seen little changes, but not enough to call it an overhaul by any means. And I think there's more to it than just little changes to be made at Al Jazeera.
And for American audiences, Natalie, Al Jazeera here looks a lot different than it does in the Arab world.
That's correct. Al Jazeera in English is a bit more moderate than Al Jazeera's Arabic channel, but moderate, take that term loosely. They still have not condemned Hamas's October 7th attack. You'll read the headlines and you'll believe that Israel just launched a genocide on Gaza 2 years ago. No Israelis were murdered, no Americans were murdered, no Americans were taken hostage. And so it's really important to read even Al Jazeera's English material with a fine-tooth comb.
Mariam Wahba and Natalie Ecanow are back with us now from the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. And we've had this visit planned for a while now, ladies. We've got to do this more often. Maybe we can get more peace deals worked out. You guys come to Florida to sit with me in the studio. But there are, Natalie, now some folks calling for President Trump to get the Nobel Peace Prize, including family members of the hostages. Do you think that's appropriate here?
Look, I mean, it can't be overstated how significant this deal is. It's been 2 years and 2 days since Hamas launched the deadliest massacre against the Jews since the Holocaust, and there are still 20 living hostages, if estimates are correct, in Gaza. And if everything goes as planned, those hostages, as well as the bodies of several dozen hostages, will be returned by early next week. And that's nothing to shake a stick at. So President Trump really has done something historic and significant here.
Yeah, and Mariam, the other thing, too, that is striking to me about this whole entire situation is in the wake of this terror attack by Hamas, we had countries like France and Australia and the UK call for a Palestinian state at the UN recently, which seems to reward this awful behavior by Hamas. I mean, where do you think that goes from here?
Absolutely. Look, Israel has always been held to a double standard. Israel has always had to deal with a media and a press that is not friendly to the Jewish state, that displays anti-Semitic tropes. And I think the rewarding of terrorism by several states, whether in Europe or all over the world, is problematic. And furthermore, I mean, what is a Palestinian state? We are 2 years into the war, and the state has no borders, has no leader, and is led by a terrorist organization. In fact, many terrorist organizations, militant organizations that the United States has designated as FTOs. So this is really, in my eyes, virtue signaling and posturing for no other reason than to score political points.
We have a soundbite here. This is Ambassador Mike Huckabee, of course, the U.S. ambassador to Israel. What he said about the peace deal. Let's take a look at that.
Well, I'm ecstatic with the news that President Trump has done what people thought not possible. He's made it so that the hostages are going to come home. There will be an end to the war in Gaza, and Hamas won't have a future there. Everything he said needed to happen, it's going to happen. And it's going to happen for one reason. That's because President Trump is the one who made this all work together, working with other countries, working with the Prime Minister of Israel. Don't let anyone take this from him. This is his achievement, and he deserves the credit for it, all of the credit.
Now, Natalie, I initially was, a little skeptical of this deal, and then I see the scene like this. This is Hotchkiss Square in Tel Aviv tonight, and you can sense the optimism there. Give us your feeling, your sense of optimism about the release of these hostages on Monday or Tuesday of next week.
Look, of course, I'm feeling super optimistic that families, after 2 long years of war and of missing their loved ones, are going to hopefully be reunited with those hostages come next week. But that optimism, for me at least, is also met with a little sense of trepidation. This is only phase 1 of a much longer deal. We've seen Hamas play games in the past and deals break down. And so I think while there's optimism to be had, and I think we all, want a moment of happiness and of optimism after 2 long years, we should also be thinking about sort of the threats that may continue to lurk in the shadows.
Yes, I remember, I think I was in 7th grade when they signed the Oslo Accords. We thought we were at a turning point then. And of course, we saw more violence after the fact. But thank you both for being here today, Mariam and Natalie. Great to see you both from the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies.